we are going to be rebuttaling Max Kellerman. Why? Because he said the most outlandish things and has no idea what he's talking about. So I'm going to go through and rebut him. He's got about a 3-minute and 21-second, rant he essentially goes on at First Take, because it's not even a rebuttal of ideas anymore. It's just who can one-up the other one's hot take. It's ridiculous. But I'll try and stomach it and make things work.
Gettleman is proving to be a terrible GM, and this was an idiotic move. How's that? Can I be more clear than that? The Giants, Gettleman, just chose to spend millions of dollars to see whether Baker Mayfield can win a Super Bowl in his second year. That's what this is. Let me get this straight. You sign Odell to make him the highest paid receiver in the league, give him all the guaranteed money. You say you're not going to move him. And then you trade him for a mid-first and a third and Jabril Peppers, who, by the way, is going to replace Landon Collins, who, by the way, you didn't even franchise. And given the contract he just got, he was in very high demand. You could have gotten something good for Collins, but instead you just let him walk. So now you got to replace him with a fine player, but
Peppers can ball.
Odell Beckham Jr. is a generation.
All right, before he gets to that point on Odell Beckham Jr. as a generational talent, let's break down. So, again, he calls Dave Gettleman a moron. So you're going to call somebody a moron after a year and a half. Well, you've been on First Take, and the ratings have been going down. The only moron on that show is you. So, why don't you leave? Because you're terrible. Then he goes on to talk about the whole trade, how it's a bad trade. No, it's not. Because you overvalue the position, you overvalue Odell Beckham Jr., when if you actually look at the body of work, what value is there? The Giants actually got a solid trade if you're not willing to overvalue something, but, for argument's sake, because you want to look smart, you want to argue a fake perspective that's not actual fact. So, whatever, I guess, on that. And then you say Landon Collins. You do realize if you franchise somebody, you have, I believe until, don't quote me on this, June 1st to sign your contract. And the Giants actually have to give you the money. So the Giants are under extreme pressure to now try and trade somebody. And they can't go on and sign anybody else because this money that they were going to use to franchise them is now potentially on the books. So now you're under a mad dash, and teams know this. So they're going to lowball you. They're going to continue to lowball you until you take what is the best of the lowball offers. So what? They may have gotten a third or fourth rounder for him. Yeah, it's better than getting nothing. But in return, you got somebody who's actually better, graded out better than Landon Collins. For your information, Max. Not the fact that you used a team of researchers behind you to even spout any sort of fact anyways, but I thought I'd mention that point. Let's continue on.
Generational talent in his prime, locked up long term. Belichick wanted to trade for him reportedly, right? Wonder why that is. Does Belichick love paying receivers? Let me get this straight. You have a problem at quarterback and offensive.
All right. So he calls Odell Beckham Jr. a generational talent. When I think generational, I think Tom Brady. I think Barry Sanders. I think Jerry Rice. I think Joe Montana. You know what all these guys do? They won. They won despite of the product around them. They weren't going to their coaches and spouting off and talking all this BS. Odell Beckham Jr. will never be a generational talent because he never will win anything in this league. He'll put up gaudy stats, sure. But when those gaudy stats don't lead to anything, he'll just be another name. Maybe he'll put up enough numbers to one day become a Hall of Famer. But that means nothing to me because I have only respect for Hall of Famers that actually worked for something, accomplished something on the field, and won in the process. And what has Odell won? Nothing. So to sit there and call him a generational talent is an absolute joke and a travesty. Let's continue on.
line. And so you trade your receiver, who's, by the way, making your ancient quarterback look like an NFL player. Because when you take Odell off the Giants, Eli's not even an NFL caliber player, certainly not a starter. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers, the wins, the losses, the QBR, everything. With Odell off the field, Eli is a joke. It's a laughing stock, the Giants. So they move Odell. And now think about this. This is where I...
All right, before he gets to his coup de grace, and I rebut him on that, he talks about the aging quarterback. Everybody always loves to go to that Eli argument. Look at the last 4 games, Max. Besides the Tennessee Titan game, where the Giants got physically dominated, they put up 32, 24, and 40 points, despite Odell Beckham Jr., despite their aging quarterback. Oh yeah, Max. They put up their most points in their division with their aging quarterback. Now, I'm not sitting and defending Eli and saying the Giants don't need to replace him. They do. But you just can't take any old person, put him behind center, and expect things to work. But apparently you do, because you blame everything on Eli like a moron, when I can give you a billion different reasons why this won't work out. But let's continue on.
I almost have like a conniption. Remember when the Giants said they're going to keep trying to win? It's the culture of the Giants to keep trying to win. Remember that it took Dak Prescott's miracle throw to beat the Giants last day of the season, or else the Giants had 6 wins instead of only 5. Maybe had the Giants not been trying to win, see what you have behind Eli, give them some starts, see what you have on the bench, move things around, make some trades. Maybe had they done that, which was clearly a rebuilding year after a certain point, but they insisted they were going to go for it. Maybe had you done that, you wouldn't have to trade your generational...
All right. Before I get into his next pointless argument, he said maybe if the Giants were trying... They were trying, Max. What do you call Jamon Brown? What do you call releasing guys and moving guys around and picking guys up off of waivers? What do you call Corey Coleman, where they didn't really have a returner, and he actually brought some stability to that position? But no, Max, you don't do your research. You don't use your team of researchers. Why don't we just blindly throw stuff up in the air and try to make things up and act like we know what we're talking about? Holy moly. You kidding me? How are you still on the air? It's ridiculous. But yeah, let's just bench people. Lose on purpose. Because yeah, that really wins in the NFL. That really gets you far. That's not what the Giants are about. But if you were actually a Giants fan, you would know that. Despite what you think that the Giants should have tanked, if the Giants actually had a defense, guess what? They would have been 9-7, 8-8, 10-6, I may dare add. Yeah, you're darn right they're going to try. Because what? They weren't even out of contention until like what, week 14, 15? Yeah, the organization wanted to try and win now, and when they hired Gettleman, they said, we want to win now. So he did everything in his power to do that, and it didn't work out. So now he's resetting things the way it should have been multiple years ago, when Jerry Reese was the GM. But you don't use your team of researchers to realize that Jerry Reese drafts have caused the Giants' downfall, essentially wasting Eli Manning's prime. But we won't even talk about that, because it's just easier to talk about now the narrative and Gettleman and drive this false narrative on ESPN and spout a bunch of crap to act like you know what you're talking about. Let's continue on.
Locked up long-term in his prime talent in order to get a draft pick that is pretty clearly going to have to be used to package with a pick you now have to move up in the draft to draft the quarterback you want, who wants to play for your team, who would have been available to you just for the draft pick had you stopped trying to win games at a certain point. Am I missing something? And if they don't want Haskins, then they have no succession plan at quarterback for Eli Manning, who's going to be a mess this year without Odell. This is a team, even, by the way, when Gettleman, Stephen A. says he's anti-analytics, you know what that means? I'm anti-thinking. You might as well hang a sign over you that says sucker, open for business.
All right, I can't even listen to this buffoon anymore. If anybody takes this dude seriously and listens to anything he has to say, you're essentially a moron as well. I'm not even joking. You're stupid if you listen to what Max Kellerman has to say. Besides boxing, don't listen to what Max Kellerman says. And even when boxing, you should really question it and do your own research. All that being said, he mentions analytics. Analytics, to me, I've watched teams manage the World Series and the playoffs with analytics. You know what it got them? No World Series trophy. That was the Dodgers and the Yankees last year. Ask any Yankee fan. You don't use analytics. You use analytics as a tool, not as your only tool, Max. So, yes, Gettleman uses analytics, but he's not going to make it part of his whole entire process or the only thing he uses to go through the process. Because if you do, you end up like the Cleveland Browns 0-16. And to say this notion of tanking still is ridiculous. And no, guess what? They're not going to draft Haskins. Because a lot of people don't believe Haskins is worth taking. Because the same pundits that tell you to take Haskins are the same pundits that'll tell you he's not ready to start in year one. So Eli would be starting either way. Because you just can't take any old quarterback. And despite what you think about Eli Manning's record with Odell Beckham Jr., the Giants in 2017-2018 were injury-riddled. Offensive line, receivers. Who did Eli Manning have to throw to? That record is skewed with Odell Beckham Jr. I look at the record when the Giants, at the end of the season, where they won against the Washington Redskins, should have beaten the Colts, lost to the Tennessee Titans, and should have beaten the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants should have been 3-1 at the end of the season, if you want to make the actual argument, Max. But, oh yeah, we don't have a defense because we gave up 412 points. But you won't mention that because that doesn't help the agenda you're trying to drive. The agenda that everybody's tired of hearing about. Because you don't know what you're talking about. Not to use a Stephen A. Smith word, but this is blasphemy. Your show's been tanking. Why? Because you're a buffoon, Max. They need to put somebody across Stephen A. Smith that actually has a head on their shoulders and can come up with their own ideas and actually rebuttal somebody. I'd do it for free. I'd still sound more intelligent than you do. And I'd actually use a team of researchers behind me so I could actually rebut intelligently. Either way, guys, this has been One Giant Rebuttal. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. And go Big Blue!